their whole objective is provoking a total war between the West and Russia.
There are going to be a lot of alt media roadkill over the course of the next 6 months, and a lot of people have gotten it wrong. They have allowed their Trump derangement syndrome. They have allowed their inability to stop taking him at his freaking word. The very people who say when a politician who will argue with you that every time a politician's lips are moving, he's lying, will then turn around and take Trump at face value because it fits their narrative. And they're willing to accept casualty ratings of 14-1, meaning they're killing 14 Ukrainians for every Russian that's dying. And they're losing? No, they're clearly winning. Ukraine will be out of money by the end of June. They'll be out of money, men, weapons, material by the end of June.
All the Trump bashing, I'm thinking, like, come on, people. Like, what did you expect? He's been in power, not 130 days? He's made so many enemies now. Everybody who has lived with high privilege in the previous system is now all out for him. He's transitioning the United States from the British free trade system to the American system of political economy. That's huge. That couldn't be any bigger. The media themselves, a lot of the stuff that goes out is flat out false. They just go out with whole lies, get everybody's head to explode. Oh, can you believe what Trump just said or what Trump just did? And then it turns out, and that's not how it happened.
Jamie Dimon comes out today and says, well, China's a rival and they're a problem. Our biggest enemy is the enemy within.
Jamie Dimon said that.
Jamie fucking Dimon said that this morning.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
Is this you? Low energy, low libido, no get up and go? Boost your testosterone naturally and rev up your engine with Immense Boost. bit.ly/CryptoRichBoost and order your testosterone boost today. Politics. The USA, Europe, Ukraine, Gaza, Trump, Starmer, Mertz. Stay ahead of the curve by signing up as one of Tom Luongo's Patreons and become a part of his investment community and get his investment letter.
It's that freaking big.
You can keep up with Alex Krainer's extraordinary analysis and writing at his Substack and also make money using his trend-following strategy. To find out more, go to bit.ly/CryptoRichAlexK. bit.ly/CryptoRichAlexK.
Go for it, Alex.
It seems to me that we're, in the last stages. Well, it seems to me, it's obvious to everybody. And I think that they're pulling out all the stops. The Mertz seems to me to be like a genuine scoundrel and a psychopath, and he is not, and a liar, and a liar. He's obviously has no trouble saying whatever he thinks is opportune and expedient at a given time. And so this whole business of him saying that we've removed all the restrictions on Ukrainians to use our missiles, here they are, do what you will with them, launch them at Moscow, whatever, is obviously a psyop. It's some kind of a game. And I'm going to go back to that British national security doctrine from 1947, where their whole objective is provoking a total war between the West and Russia. And so as this thing in Ukraine is winding down and the Ukrainians are getting beaten down little by little, and it's expected that almost any day Ukrainian forces are going to give way, and there's going to be a major push by the Russians, probably going all the way to Dnieper. We'll see what happens, but we're at the tipping point of those developments. And so now, how do you escalate from that? You escalate it in a very blatant way by telling Ukrainians, here, we're going to give you a couple of hundred of these Taurus missiles that'll fly all the way to Moscow. Knock yourself out. Obviously, everybody knows that Ukrainians cannot launch the Taurus missile without help from the Germans. So what Mertz is doing effectively, as an already very unpopular chancellor, he's effectively declaring war on Russia. That's Germany declaring war on Russia. And they're putting the Russians in a position where they might have to strike against a German target in Germany, which then could kick this war to a higher gear into an all-out confrontation between Russia and the West, in which case Trump would find it very, very difficult to stay out. The Americans always try to stay out of these European wars, and then somehow the British manage to drag them into it one way or another. They try every different way, by hook or by crook. They will bring the United States into this battle. If it takes assassinating Trump and bringing somebody else, Juan Guaido or somebody, into the White House, they're going to try to do this. But, to be able to do that, first you have to do step one, escalate. So they're doing everything they can do today to get to that objective. And then, oh, by the way, these documents, the Operation Unthinkable, the National Security Doctrine, all written back in the 1940s, and then reaffirmed by documents drafted in the 50s and the 60s. Like the strategy never changed. It's the same track all the time. One of the most important things for the British foreign policy is to keep the United States on their side, to keep the United States committed to the mutual defense. They have a MDA, Mutual Defense Agreement, with how do you call it? With Britain, United States and Britain. They have a mutual defense agreement. They just revised it very recently before Trump came into power, still under, I think in 2023, under Biden. And that made it, that new agreement made it much more likely that the war would kick off into a nuclear confrontation. So this is what we're living, and I guarantee you that from 2022, even before 2021 until now, we have the person of Vladimir Putin to thank that we are even still alive, because these people are dead set on going full hog on this war, nuclear and all, because they think that they will prevail. They think that they can win a nuclear confrontation. And they're willing to make that bet. And they know that in a very short time, after the nuclear exchange, there's going to be about 1 billion casualties in Europe and the United States. 1 billion. That's in their, they've been running simulations at the Pentagon about launching a preemptive nuclear strike against Russia and what would be the result. And Tucker Carlson had an interview with one, I think Nick Kazianis something. I think it's Nick, but maybe it's Michael, whatever. And he explains, because that guy participated in those war games, those simulations. They say, like, yeah, we launch a preemptive nuclear strike against Russia, there's going to be 1 billion casualties. You would think that somebody would say, like, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. Maybe we shouldn't do this. No, they say, yeah, but we could win. So, screw the 1 billion people. If we win, it's worth the price. We're willing to pay it with 1 billion of other people's lives. And Merz is the man who is going to do his best to bring this about. He's trying to bring this about. And he has full support from Starmer. He has substantial support from Emmanuel Macron. All these other people don't even know where they are. Kaja Kallas and Ursula von der Leyen and all these people, they just know where the next paycheck is coming from. And if they have to spend $800 billion in rearmament, they know that they're going to get something out of it. They're going to get some commissions. Maybe the nephew's daughter's barber's cousin is going to get a defense contract, and then they're going to get something out of that. That's what they're thinking about. The fact that it's going to end up destroying the world, it's remote to them. It's abstract to them. But anyway, that's what we're up against now, and we're in the end game. And the end game means that the gambits are getting increasingly desperate and increasingly stupid. And the stupid part is encouraging, actually, because it's become very difficult not to see it. you really have to be a subscriber to the mainstream media, and you have to still believe that they're not lying to you, that they're telling you the truth. I think those ranks are really thinning out.
I certainly hope so, but I fear not. If you go to Blue Sky,
And I,
you'll see. Tom, 1 second. I'll come to you in a
yeah,
second. Because you and I, Alex, in a couple of weeks' time, we're scheduled to record a video with Dr. Rainer Rothfuss, who's a member of the IFD. I did a video with Tom and him a few weeks ago, and he joined the IFD because of their anti-war ethos. So that will make for an interesting conversation. So please subscribe and all that business.
In
Tom?
other words, a Nazi.
Far-right white supremacist Nazi.
Far-right white supremacists. I mean, only that kind doesn't want war nowadays.
That's right.
only,
A Quakerish far-right white supremacist Nazi like me.
Quakerish.
Yeah.
Not Nazi. Yeah, great.
That's great. Which is a good time to mention bit.ly/make-war-history and bit.ly/lawful tax protest. If you're in the UK, it is illegal to pay taxes. And you'll find out why by going to those links, and I kid you not. Tom.
The Alex, all of that is spot on. No argument. And I think that Putin and Trump both know this explicitly. And I think they're both giving each other the opportunity to walk away from the other one, which is why Trump is calling Putin crazy and why Putin is sending out the drunk attack dog or the Trump equivalent on the Russian side, Medvedev, to say we're gonna blow up, London, and whenever Putin allows Medvedev the drunk tweet, it's usually a good sign that we're having that he and Trump understand what's going on, and everybody's gotten this wrong. And I think I had Joaquin Flores on the
podcast. Tom, just on that, everybody has got it wrong because I follow the Sirius report. I don't always agree with them, right? But even they're saying, Trump's deranged, he's lost it. Putin showed him up or whatever.
Rich, I'm gonna make. Here's my most provocative prognostication for the next 6 months, and I say this with love. Mm-hmm. There are going to be a lot of alt media roadkill over the course of the next 6 months, and a lot of people have gotten it wrong. They have allowed their Trump derangement syndrome. They have allowed their inability to stop taking him at his freaking word. And they're running with things. And they're running with things for whatever their reasoning. And I don't know what that is. And I'm not here to speculate. But I did an hour and 15, 20 minutes the other day with Joaquin Flores, and we went over a lot of this stuff. And I don't care if we're talking, I see it in the financial markets as much as I see it in the geopolitical space. And in fact, I told Joaquin, I said, I need to sit down and talk to somebody rational, like right now, because everybody has lost their freaking minds. So,
Tom, by the way, I completely get it. Trump says loads of stuff. Rah, 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 rah.
The very people who say when a politician who will argue with you that every time a politician's lips are moving, he's lying, will then turn around and take Trump at face value because it fits their narrative.
Yep.
Really? Like, are you kidding me? Same people. I was on with Dave Gronowski this morning. I was talking about the people who were like losing their minds over the budget reconciliation bill, taking the CBO's deficit numbers at their word. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, has not been right about anything ever. Governments publish statistics to make themselves look good. We all know this, and yet all of a sudden, because the spending cuts aren't deep enough, every libertarian in the world is screaming, is using the Congressional Budget Office, which they've never quoted in a positive sense in 25 fucking years that I've been following them, are all now screaming about this. I asked a very simple question, like, all of a sudden, guys, you guys are taking all this shit at face value? Really? Oh, okay, fine. Okay, I mean, we're all susceptible to being gaslit by morons. It's not hard. Like, I am at times, and I fall for it every once in a while. I'm like, oh, shit. Fall for that. Okay, but I fall for 1 out of 30, right? I do, or 1 out of 20, or whatever. We all fall for one every once in a while. There's nothing we can do about it. What's happening here is an opportunity for both Trump and Putin to walk away, for Putin to escalate and do his summer campaign military campaign he needs to in order to destroy NATO, presence in Ukraine, and to destroy the UAF once and for all. Now, remember, their rhetoric is getting more and more histrionic, and their escalatory framework is getting more and more histrionic the closer the Russians get to the last lines of defense that NATO set up in the Donbass 10 years ago. The concrete bunkers, the overlapping, like all of this stuff. Like why has there been such a massive bull market in concrete for the last 15 years? It's not because the Chinese are building skyscrapers to nowhere. It's because we've been dumping it all into Ukraine to turn the whole thing into an overlapping trench warfare zone. And the Russians are moving in. I was talking to Joaquin the other day, and he brought this point up. He said they're just doing classic Gen 2. The Russians are classic Gen 2 style siege warfare with artillery. They walk in, they bomb the place to the smithereens, they send in the drones, they kill everybody, and then they move some people in, and they're willing to accept casualty ratings of 14-1, meaning they're killing 14 Ukrainians for every Russian that's dying. They were getting 8-1. Now they're up to 14-1. Now the Russians are supposedly the attackers here, meaning they're supposed to attack with a 3-1 infantry advantage over the defenders. So the Russians are prosecuting the war in the Donbass at a 42 times the efficiency rate that we would normally expect, or anywhere from 25 to 42 times, and they're losing? No, they're clearly winning. Putin has hundreds of thousands of troops that are battle hardened, ready to go. They did some maneuver warfare the other night to take an important stronghold from the Ukrainians. I was watching a video on YouTube that one of my patrons found for me. They're like, you don't think the Russians know how to do maneuver warfare? Here you go. And they just don't do it very often because they don't have to, because their goal is to wear out NATO. Because what is the goal of all of this? The goal of all of this is to convince Americans this war is unwinnable, so that we can wash our hands of it. So that when Europe escalates, Trump has got 75, 80% of the American people turning to the GOP saying, fuck you, we're not going to war for Europe this time. But he's got to make that case strongly. He's got to allow that insight and that mimetic collapse, whatever you want to call it, to percolate through the zeitgeist to the point where he can do that. Now, I'm going to tie this directly to domestic politics. Now, domestic politics. Why do you think the Senate is so angry about this budget reconciliation bill? Why is everybody lying about the budget reconciliation bill? Everybody from Thomas Massie to Lindsey Graham and everyone in between are lying about the budget reconciliation bill. Because Stephen Miller laid this out the other day. I talked about it on the podcast I did. I talked about it on my Twitter feed. Under the Budget Reconciliation Senate rules, only mandatory spending can be touched. So the only cuts to the budget can happen on mandatory spending. They can talk about tax rates, they can manipulate tax rates, but they cannot codify many of the Doge cuts because a lot of them are to discretionary spending, which can only happen under the rescission process after reconciliation happens. Therefore, why are the neocons against in the Senate, the usual suspects, the Lindsey Grahams, the Lisa Murkowskis, the Susan Collinses, blah, 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 and everybody else are all against this bill and all going to vote against it. The Ron Johnsons, who loves to play that he's a fiscal hawk when he's fucking not. He's a classic. He's no better than the rest of them. They're all saying this because what they want is for Trump. They're holding this bill hostage to get Trump to sign off on more aid to Ukraine to keep the friggin' satellites up so that the Germans can bomb Moscow. That's what they're doing. That's what's happening. Everything else is bullshit. That's what's going on. And to watch Rand Paul and Thomas Massie play this fucking game, like Rand Paul doesn't know this. Like Rand Paul hasn't been through budget reconciliation negotiations before. Okay? I'm serious. I've called them all out, and I'm going to continue to call them all out until we get what we want, which is this bill needs to pass, because once this bill is done, Trump doesn't need friggin' Congress, doesn't need a legislature for anything until the midterms. Not a thing. He can focus on foreign policy. He can focus on fighting the judiciary, who are clearly in revolt. He has to fight in multiple arenas at once. You get this bill done, he doesn't need Congress anymore. They know it. And what is Davos doing? He's putting as much pressure on their people in the Senate to stop this as much as possible, to delay, to extend and pretend this fight while they spray and pray every damn, they're throwing everything at, oh my God, Trump doesn't know how to do anything. Allow the judiciary to go into open revolt and to form a judicial coup. And it's all happening. This is the game. This is the fulcrum on which everything rests. Now, why are they getting more histrionic? Well, there are at least 3 or 4 different things that are happening here between now and July. One, by best estimates, Ukraine will be out of American aid pledged to them by the Biden junta that Trump can't do a thing about. Ukraine will be out of money by the end of June. They'll be out of money, men, weapons, material by the end of June. 2, why did Trump, after von der Leyen calls us, no, don't put a 50% tariff on us? And he extended it to July 9th. What's also happening at this point in time? We all know that the fiscal, the debt rollover cliff is happening this summer. So they're trying to push this into that period in order to try and make the United States look as chaotic as possible. Then we get the Moody's downgrade. Then we get this. Then we get that. All of which to try and, while damn well the Europeans are dumping long end of the Treasury curve and buying the ones and twos in order to create that inversion, the yield curve inversion, and to sell the idea that no one wants U.S. debt, which is bullshit. We had a great 5-year auction the other day. We're about to have a great 20-year auction, because every time the U.S. yield curve sells off 25 basis points, foreign central banks that aren't Davos come in and buy like it's an Amazon Prime Day, for fuck's sake. Like, this is what's going on, and we have to see all of it in context to be able to understand everything that Alex just laid out. Okay, and I don't know if I give it. I see it all this way, but what Trump is doing is trying to get an opportunity to walk away from this. So if this budget reconciliation bill passes the Senate, if he can arm twist it across the finish line, we know we don't have to worry about Congress anymore at all, and these guys are then going to have to get behind this bill. And there's one other little wrinkle to this that I'll lay out for you. There's a lot of very prominent people who are in the Senate that are up for re-election and are going to face stiff primary challenges for the first time ever in 2026. So they need to have something they can run on. A little bit of opposition to Trump for fiscal hawk reasons looks good on their resume. So we have a little bit of that going on as well. But all they have to do is pass Trump's bill, because Trump's approval rating is as high as it's ever been. Ever. So these next 5 weeks, I think, are going to be the most critical. If he wins the political battles and Ukraine runs out of money and Putin starts overrunning large swaths of the Ukrainian defensive positions, because he's positioned right now to attack from like one of 4 different places, and the Ukrainians don't have enough people to cover one of them, no less 4 of them. Here we are. So we have that. We've got the budget bill. We've got all of these things happening, and and Mers saying what he said about, there's no restrictions anymore on the use of these missiles. They usually don't say anything like that until they've already started doing it. So Biden gave the Ukraine that, or Biden, sorry, I make sure I use my scare quotes here, because it was not Joe Biden, clearly. But the Biden junta put this policy in place before Trump was in power. Now, of course, the question is, well, why hasn't Trump rescinded it? That's a good question. He's looking for leverage in the negotiations with Putin to get as much out of this as humanly possible. Like, he's still Donald Trump at the end of the day. So, but at the same time, if NATO escalates in a way that it works to Trump's advantage, if NATO escalates in a way that the Russians are justified to attack further, Trump can, ultimately he washes his hands of it, because NATO did shit that he didn't want them to do. He kept saying, I want you to come to the negotiating table. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. So negotiations have been going on. That's pretty obvious. And I think all of this stuff, well, then we have Iran. Sorry, I'm trying to put all this together all at the same time. I mean, you can see it, but you can see how they're all tied together, right? And all of these are Gordian knots that if you just get rid of Congress, he can then start taking the meat cleaver to all these stupid geopolitical Gordian knots, which are not really that difficult to solve, but he can't do so until he gets this thing passed, because he needs to have the process of fixing the American fiscal position done, and they know it. So that's where all the leverage is. That's where everybody's leverage is. All right, I'm done. All right, I'm finished.
Wow. Thank you.
Was that good?
That was awesome.
Does that make sense? I mean,
yeah, it makes sense. And I'm, I don't have such a high resolution picture of American politics as you do, but I had a vague sense that the situation is broadly as you describe it. And so, all the Trump bashing, I'm thinking like, come on, people, like, what did you expect? He's been in power, what, like not 130 days?
Mm-hmm.
And he's made so many enemies now in the American political class who are opposing him at every turn. The military industrial complex, the big pharma, the big ag, the banks, the European allies, everybody who has lived with high privilege in the previous system is now all out for him. So, he's not gonna spell it out. I'm gonna do this in this way for this purpose, because he's gonna get attacked immediately. And then, who controls the media? Well, he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
They do. So he's gonna be demonized and lambasted by the media nonstop. So then he has to narrow down his decision window. So before he actually cuts to a decision, he misdirects. So he's shooting out all kinds of stupid shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes like, boom, okay, we're doing this. And you saw the test of this in his call with Putin. But he did exactly what they didn't want him to do.
Right.
And then when it comes to Iran, I've been guessing that he's doing all kinds of bizarre maneuvers to avoid going to war with Iran.
Yes.
And it's not an easy maneuver, because the pressure on him and his cabinet to launch a war against Iran is almost unbearable. You can see that. What Hexet says, let's not go to Iran quite yet. They wanted his head. Witkov comes back from Iran or from Oman after he's spoken with Iranians, and he's like, "Hey, it looks like we're going to have a deal." They said that they will limit their uranium enrichment, so it looks like we're going to be able to cut a deal. Next thing they attack him, and he has to reverse himself and says like, "Okay, no nuclear enrichment whatsoever." And now Israel was going to launch an attack on Iran. And Trump, according to himself, talked to Bibi, called up Bibi and said, "Don't you effing dare. Don't do it." Is he telling the truth? I don't know, but I see that Bibi didn't attack, even though they were about to attack any second.
Yep.
It still hasn't happened. So they're doing something. And I think that the peanut gallery has to accept that you're going to have to tolerate a certain level of ambiguity and uncertainty. But the big picture should go to Trump's credit. The big picture. He's transitioning the United States from the British free trade system to the American system of political economy. That's huge. That couldn't be any bigger. He has called up Vladimir Putin twice after 3 years of nobody in the US administration calling Vladimir Putin. Now, this is not just about having friendly chats with Vladimir Putin. The relationship between the United States and Russia is far and away the most important bilateral relationship in the world, defining the future of humanity, whether we're going to end up incinerated in a nuclear Armageddon or whether we're going to cut our way to the road to peace. And he has done that. Okay, make America healthy again, all of those initiatives, all good stuff. But he's making enemies all along the way, and they're attacking him, and they want him dead. So I would just wish to suggest to people not to be too reactive to everything they hear. And then also the media themselves, a lot of the stuff that goes out is flat out false.
Yes.
They just go out with whole lies, get everybody's head to explode, and then for days everybody's like doing somersaults and jumping out of their heads. Oh, can you believe what Trump just said or what Trump just did? And then it turns out, well, he actually, no, that's not what happened. That's not how it happened. And so I think that we're in a transition period. A lot of dust is gathering. You know, you have to, the waters are being muddied. It's very important to kind of keep calm and carry on at this moment in time. And then, you know, even if everything I said was wrong, and Trump is a complete deception, and he's completely undercover working for the globalists, and he's going to betray the American people. We don't know that, but if we dismiss Trump, if we withdraw support, then we are actually turning it into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because
Alex, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. Let me just add one little thing. Ready? Jamie Dimon comes out today and says, well, China's a rival and they're a problem. Our biggest enemy is the enemy within.
Jamie Dimon said that.
Jamie fucking Dimon said that this morning.
Ouch. That's amazing.
Which is wholly consistent with everything I've said about Dimon for the last 4 years.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And so, you know, if everything we've been talking about is too abstract right now, then picture this. Picture that you're a crew or passenger on a ship that's sailing through a storm. And your survival depends on keeping a cool head and keep doing what you're meant to be doing. All hands on deck. And the captain is saying, now we're doing this, now we're doing that. And it so happens that the American people chose Trump to be the captain at this moment. So, suck it up and live up to this all hands on deck moment. Because the ship might sink anyway. But it's much less likely to sink if we don't all just start jumping out of our heads, you know, leaving our posts, going crazy, and withdrawing support from the captain. And when he says like do this, we say like, no, dude, we're not doing it. Because then you're sinking yourself. Then you've begun to sink yourself, and you've, you know, doomed the whole ship.
And you're carrying water for the very people you say you're fighting.
You're carrying water for your enemies, exactly.
I can't. It's so very obvious, folks. And it doesn't mean that Trump is right about everything. It doesn't mean that he's going to get through this without, you know, making mistakes or making missteps or this, that, or anything else. These things are going to happen. No plan survives contact with the enemy. You have to at the end of the day, you're going to have to, like, you know, bob and weave a little bit. You're going to have to misdirect. You're going to have to go left to go right. You're going to have to do all of these things. And the problem is that what we're actually watching more than anything else is people projecting their anxiety onto the people who are actually fighting this thing out, and then explaining that, as opposed to just going to fucking therapy and just getting it over with. Like deal with that. Like, I'm watching people with, you know, just like, dude, if you got mommy issues, like, that's what therapy's for. Like, it's not Donald Trump's job. Donald Trump's job is to figure out how to get us through this. But he's clearly put himself in a position to try to sacrifice the last bit of his life to do what needs to be done. And he's doing what is in now. Go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast with the Ian Burlingame. He is taking on a 500-year-old entrenched power system of power and system of governance, as Alex likes to put it. And you think you're not going to get your hair mussed? To quote George C. Scott from Dr. Strangelove, you think this is going to be an easy fight? Like, so we're watching in real time the people who don't have the stones to fight under any circumstance, then piss, bitch, whine, and moan about how the thing is being fought on their behalf. You know what? Not listening anymore. This is what's clearly happening. And people who truly understand statecraft understand the way this game is being played. If you want scalps on the table, folks, domestically or whatever, you may never get any, but you may win anyway. And if that's not winning to you, I submit that you were always expecting too much in the first place. Do you want to survive so that your children can have a better world to build after we're done tearing this old shitty system down? Or do you want revenge? If you want revenge, that's on you. Me, I want to win. I want to wake up tomorrow and know that we're incrementally moving in the right direction. And by wearing them out through a war of attrition, of using their own tools against them, we're talking Davos now. We use their own tools of escalation, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and everything else against them in order. And while we remain calm, what have I been saying for years? Be a node of stability in your community, in your interpersonal life and everything else. Be a node of stability. And not trust the plan, because I don't know. I mean, there's clearly a plan. I don't know if it's going to work or not, right? The captain's got a plan. He's going to head the ship on this vector, this way. He's got, and it is what it is. Did we want to go into this battle with Donald Trump? I don't know, but it's who we got. It's you know what I mean? Like that's the way I see it at this point. And
here's a thought.
Sure.
You see, when Vladimir Putin came to power, by all appearances, it seemed that the Russian oligarchs brought their own errand boy to the Kremlin, and that they were still in charge. And for a long time, it seemed that way. So he was the darling of the Brits. Tony Blair, in the first 2 years of Vladimir Putin's tenure at the Kremlin, met with Putin 9 times. Putin got a state visit, the first Russian statesman who got a state visit in London since the 1700s. You know, he got to ride with the Queen in an open-top carriage in London. So they thought for the longest time that they got their errand boy, that he was their man, that he was their Volodymyr Zelensky. Mm-hmm. And they only realized they cocked up. And you know who it was that brought him to power, actually? It was the MI6, by the admission of Sir Richard Dearlove. And he didn't really admit it. He only expressed regret that they had brought him to power. So I guess that's a little bit different.
That's tantamount to
it's the same thing. And they only realized that they cocked up the day when he lined up the oligarchs and told them, "New sheriff in town, rules are different from now on. You stay out of politics." And then he slammed in 2003. He slammed the Rothschilds trustee Mikhail Khodorkovsky in prison for tax evasion. Yeah, he didn't get him on Epstein list, anything like that. Tax evasion. It doesn't matter. Who cares? He spent 9 years in prison. And so it's only at that point that it started to become clear that Vladimir Putin is actually a Russian patriot who's trying to steer the Russian ship onto the right course. And it took a very long time for all the wrongs to be righted. And it was very gradual. And for 2, almost 3 years, it looked like he was control of position, basically. Why? Mm-hmm. I imagine, I don't know the answer to that question, why, but I imagine that he needed to, take care of his 6 o'clock, Mm-hmm. He needed to staff the right ministries and the courts and the prosecutor's office and the banks and I don't know what else with people who were going to be loyal to him. He needed to understand the lay of the land, because we know also that one of these banker oligarchs testified later that he used to spend all day, every day with Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin was asking him, "How does the system work? Explain this to me. Explain that to me." The guy said, like, we used to spend every day together until 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, and then start in the morning again, and he was guiding him to. And so it was only when when Putin understood what exact battle he had to fight that he, and so I imagine that, Putin came after 10 years of the rule of that oligarchy. Trump's coming after 500 years, after, in the United States, after many decades, maybe more than a century. When was the Federal Reserve set up? In 1913.
Yeah,
Well, they were already preparing the terrain since they assassinated Abraham Lincoln. So 1865, right? 66, whatever it was. So he's going against something that's far more, Trump is going against something that's far more entrenched, far more powerful than the Russian oligarchs ever were. And, we shouldn't expect some kind of a Hollywood version of a white knight who comes in and slays the dragon like that. And it looks sexy and elegant.
So, Alex, just to add to that, without Vladimir Putin pulling that off in Russia, without, in many ways, Xi Jinping pulling off what he's pulled off in China, Trump would not be in the position to roll the table, to turn the tables on the people in Europe. Yeah. This is the point. I mean, so what you just laid out is incredibly important to understand that without that sets up Russia as a node of stability under fire from these people. Xi Jinping comes to power, chosen by his internal oligarchy to right the ship and trap, as you pointed out, a cornerstone, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of investment capital behind the wall in China, and then to cut the head of the snake off, as you put it. And when you said it at the time, it was it's not something I hadn't thought of, but it was lovely the way you put it. And when you have those people, so you look at what Trump is attempting to do, and how you've pointed out, and you and I have speculated over the last year or so about this, that it's not that Russia, China, and the United States are looking to build any kind of alliance. It's that all they're doing is that their interests align in the Venn diagram of interests in geopolitics, because there are no friends in geopolitics. Trump and Putin are not friends. Putin and Xi are not friends. But their interests align that for them to survive and for humanity to thrive individually, we have to take out Europe. And then we go back to, Mr. Krainer's arguments about collateral and currency and all of that. And it becomes very obvious that once you start viewing the world that way, then the moves that Trump is making to shore up the northern coast of the Mediterranean, what Putin's doing to shore up and tie Ukraine off from the Black Sea, and then what's happening in the Middle East, where Trump has now gathered together the Gulf states, the powerful Gulf states, to work with him to shore that up. And the Chinese are happy as long as Iran doesn't get bombed, because Iran is the crossroads of the international north-south transport corridor for Russia and for Belt and Road, right? For China, the sticking point, of course, is Israel. And here's the thread here's the thread that Trump is trying to pass through the eye of the needle. The thread he's trying to pass through the eye of the needle is for Israel to survive, and for Netanyahu and the neoconservatives who created Israel to be wiped out. That is an immensely tall order, and it has immense ramifications for American politics. And the timing on that at this moment in time, trying to get all that done right now with the leftovers of the boomer cons and silent era cons of American politics, having not fully left the stage yet, that is an immense undertaking. And I don't know that he's going to be able to pull it off, but it's clear that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay?
Agreed.
And so let's just, again, I'm happy to watch him do what he can, where he can, and in other venues. This is where one of the things that came up. One of the things that came up when we were in Alberta. I know we had many a discussion with the Alberta guys about what's going on with Daniel Smith and Albertan independence and all of this stuff. I'm going to use Daniel Smith as the stand-in for Trump now. Let's talk about this for a second.
The premier of Alberta, right?
I'm sorry?
The premier of Alberta.
Yes, Daniel Smith is the premier of Alberta. Sorry, I should have said. So for those of you who don't know, Alberta's got a very difficult choice in front of them. They know they need to get themselves independent from Ottawa. and take Saskatchewan and most of British Columbia with them, if not the Yukon and all that. All of Western Canada needs to. But you've got to do so in such a way that you don't give the globalists the obvious mechanism by which to call you separatists and racists and all the typical stuff that they always do. So you have to prep the ground properly. And the worry now on the ground in Alberta is Danielle Smith controlled opposition? Is she a Pied Piper, or is she a separatist at heart that is now also in a difficult position? My argument to them, well, we discussed this many times, is look, you win nothing if you leave her out on the ledge because you don't have anybody to replace her with right now. So much like Giorgia Meloni in Italy, much like Trump in Washington. So she may be imperfect, but I got news for you. You have two options, and they are both exactly the same. You can, if you create a political unity on the ground and a political movement on the ground that says, we want our freedom, we want our liberty, whatever that looks like. Let the individual people of Alberta, the ones who are not convinced of this, let that prey on, let them work that out for themselves. You give Danielle Smith no other option if she's a controlled opposition, but to go along with it. Or if she is a separatist, you're giving her the political capital to do the right thing and to go about this in the right way. So it all depends on, and I had many discussions with people on both sides of the fence about her. And that's where and this is where I've landed when it comes to Trump. I've talked to people behind the scenes, and I've talked to people, out in the world. And I think it's pretty obvious that Trump is trying to do the right thing. He may not always do it the way we think he should do it, but who the fuck are we? We don't have any skin in the game other than, we want to see him succeed. But at the end of the day, it's the infinite gulf between being a critic and being an artist. It's the same process. And I go back to one of the only things that I really agreed with Nassim Taleb over the last 5 years since COVID about is that you have to have skin in the game. In order to be a person of, in order to be able to change anything, you have to be a person with skin in the game. So this is why I listen very carefully to people like, for example, Jamie Dimon. Why? Because no one has more skin in the game than the CEO of the most powerful bank on Wall Street. And if he's saying, we don't want the City of London crap anymore, we don't want this Davos crap anymore, we want an America for America, because that's the best way of going about it, I'm listening. To your point, so what I'm doing here now I'm going back to your point earlier about all the people who hate Trump. Well, this is why do you think Trump has $1 trillion military budget in the budget reconciliation? Why do you think he added money to it's not because he wants to continue to run the military, the empire around the world. It's because he's trying to buy off the MIC as a political opponent and say, look, we got a Navy to rebuild. We got an Air Force to rebuild. You guys have fucked all these other things up under Obama. We got all this stuff to do. We're going to have to spend some money. And I can take you off the game board as one of my opponents, but we're going to have to spend an extra $150 billion a year for the next couple of years.
Yeah, excellent.
I'm not happy about it.
But I'm glad you brought that up, Tom, because I've been trying to make two arguments about this. First of all, any politician who promises you that they will, reduce the budget deficit and cut spending and all of this, they're not going to be able to do it unless and until you have a thorough monetary system reform. Mm-hmm. Find me one government in the world that doesn't have an upward sloping curve of budget deficits. It doesn't exist. It's baked into the system that the government has to step in and the government expenditures have to grow every year. Otherwise, you're getting the deflationary gap and the system goes into a deflationary death spiral. So, if you want to grow your economy, unless you like your economy to stabilize at a depression level of activity, the government has to step in. It has to be bigger and bigger and bigger. $1 trillion military budget, that doesn't mean squat. That doesn't, people go from that to immediately an implication, see, he's exactly like all the other people. Well, how do you know that? How do you know that he's not going to use that money to rebuild America's infrastructure as he said he would? How do you know that he's not going to use that money to bring the troops home from Germany, from everywhere where they are, shut down the military bases? How do you know that that money is not going to go into AI research and the space program and all the stuff that's going to then kind of provide an impetus and like a Kickstarter to civilian technologies and business activity that's going to build up on top of that? How do you know all those things? So, set aside the illusion that he can bring you back small government and balanced budget. That's not going to happen. It's a mathematical impossibility with the given monetary system. And $2 trillion is a lot of money to spread around. And you have a power of defining how it's going to be spent. And you can go to the very same military industrial complex and tell them, look, we don't want you to build these stupid, F-35s. How about fix the railroads? How about develop high-speed rail trains to crisscross America and across to Canada and to Yukon and across Alaska to the old world, to the Eurasian continent? How do you know that that's not going to happen? But it could, and if you participated in the game and you demanded those outcomes, you would make those outcomes a lot more likely. So it's part of
this is funny. I remind everybody that it's in the United States. It's called the Eisenhower Interstate Highway System.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Why do we, Europeans like to talk about how we don't have enough trains in the United States. Well, it's because we have an interstate highway system that was designed, and a military that was designed to internally move our military on the road system. And oh, by the way, that road system needs a lot of work. The bridges are all falling down. There's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to be done. And that can all be written off under the DoD budget because it's all national security based. There's so many things that we talk about from this perspective that could easily be justified under military spending. It's exactly what Putin is doing in rebuilding the Russian and remaking the Russian economy now, while he's at quote unquote war in Ukraine, prosecuting a war in Ukraine in the cheapest way imaginable by building 155 millimeter artillery shells and drones and sending those over there to waste to watch NATO throw. We throw a $5,000 drone swarm out. You send back a $10 million missile. Eventually, you know what I mean? Like the math doesn't work. It's why the Houthis haven't been destroyed in Yemen. It's why yada yada yada. It's like that's all part of the game, and that's a very salient point. I'm glad you see it that way because I was about to make that point when you interrupted me, and I'm like, no, Alex is making my point for me. Outstanding. So thank you. No, it's good. No, I'm happy you see it that way. I really am because I'm seriously like you and I haven't spoken about this stuff. And, the entire time we were at Cornerstone, we didn't have a chance. Alex and I didn't really have a chance to have any serious discussion about what's going on in the world. We were all overwhelmed with just people saying nice things to us and having conversations with individual people. If I saw Alex, I think the most time I spent with Alex in the 4 days we were there was at dinner, like the night before you left. Like,
yeah,
well, that was an hour and a half or 2 hours. I didn't see Alex for 4 days. I saw him here and there. We did the bro fist pump and all that stuff. But but what I mean is but at the end of the day, we were both being pulled in like 100 different directions, and so. It's lovely and it was wonderful and it was overwhelming and we enjoy. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed every moment of it, and it made me even more committed to the whole process.
It's yeah.
Okay, I mean, what we're gonna do. So no, this is a good thing. So
Tom, what you said about Danielle Smith, it's almost like she's the best we got, and it's like Donald Trump, he's the best we got. He's doing a good job. Largely, I
think Trump has been good.
He's doing a really good job, right? The argument about Daniel Smith, and bear with me for a moment here, could that also apply, and I don't think so, I'm not so sure, to Nigel Farage?
No.
Now, hold on. Here's why. Now, I already said I don't think so, right? But here's why. Let me argue with myself, right?
Sure, fair enough. I'll shut up now. Let me put myself on mute.
The way that Starmer seems to be responding, rather feebly, but he's a really feeble, ineffective, awful politician who didn't win his place, not at all. It was created for him and he was deposited there. It's not through any talent of his own. The way that he's responding to Reform's rise in the polls, plus also the fact that Reform as a new party will have taken on loads and loads of people who I suspect haven't been thoroughly vetted the way that the Labour MPs have been vetted. that they're all blow-ins. They're all faithful to Starmer versus being faithful to British people and Labour principles and policy, traditional Labour. And that reform, that the new cohort, assuming that they do get in, I saw a poll today, they're going to have predicted to have a 74-seat majority, right? But even a whole rump of new Reform MPs come in. It's going to include people like Rupert Lowe. Now, why I don't agree with myself is because of what they did to Rupert Lowe. But just give me your take on that.
What I'll say is that what's clear that at this point is that Nigel Farage, I think, is completely captured by the City of London. His job is to bring you up to the pearly gates and then betray you. He's done it multiple times. He's now, they need to, British politics, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is really good at creating escape pressure release valves. And so we get opposition to the existing rule. We allow a populace to rise up for a little bit, and then you squash them. And then you do it again, and then you squash the hopes, and you do it again. And Farage has played that role, I think, very, very well over the years. And I don't know. I'm gonna make it. I don't get that feel at this point, because if Farage was there to do anything other than provide a kind of cheap pressure release valve, and then he'd be closer to Trump's orbit at this point. Is my mind. He's not. He was there for years to whisper in Trump's ear the standard, kind of British City of London party line and British foreign policy line about Iran, about Ukraine, about this. But every time when it comes down to it, Nigel always gives us, and I hate to say this because I used to be a huge fan of Nigel's, but in the last year or so, it's been really obvious that he's been activated in a particular way in order to maintain the status quo. So I'm encouraged by other people within Reform pushing him to the side and then coming in and cleaning house in Parliament. But do you really think that's going to allow that? Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't know. Because the other person that they've pushed out is Ben Habib.
Right.
And he was also independent-minded, sovereigntist, not captured, like Rupert Lowe. Ben Habib was the deputy leader. He didn't get him. He's not an MP, but he left. And so you get these authentic sovereigntists, or those that are making the right noises that Davos doesn't want, being sidelined or kicked out of the party. Alex, your take?
Well,
if you have one.
I do have one. I don't know what happened with Nigel Farage, but I do remember that he was very close to Trump, and he was with Trump relatively often, supportive, and now he's nowhere to be seen. It's as though they don't have any kind of relationship, and you don't hear any kind of statement. Nigel Farage used to be very supportive of Trump, and he advocated Trump's corner. I don't see that anymore. But I do remember that, about a year or two ago, Nigel Farage got unbanked.
Yeah. And
it was very dramatic. He got unbanked, and then he couldn't open a bank account with anybody pretty much.
Yep.
And I had a unbanking light experience, and it's very troubling. It's really, you realize how vulnerable you are, how extremely vulnerable your whole life setup is. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that wasn't the moment when he was brought in, when he got unbanked. How did he get rebanked? I don't know that part of the story, but I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't tell him, look, you can have a good life, you can have a good business life, you can be successful, you can have a good political life. You just can't go on like this anymore, because look what we can do to you. And then maybe he was like, because I fully expected at that point that Farage would be moving back to Monaco or to Switzerland or something, because once they throw you out of the banking system, you're cooked.
Yeah.
You're done. Like, what are you going to do? Open a fast food stand on the street? Sell hot dogs in cash? You're like really screwed. Well, somehow he's back, and he's in a more powerful position than he was before that. So I think that maybe they tamed him.
And maybe there's a redemption story here where Nigel is playing possum on them as well, and then when he gets back into power, he turns tables on them the same way that Putin turned the tables on City of London, as Alex described earlier. I'm open to that. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to see that story. But as of right now, this is what I've got. He's been on the wrong side of every issue for the last year.
Yeah,
and that's a tell. And whether that's and again, I can be generous and I can take Alex's point of view. I'm happy to.
No, I'm not being generous. I'm just saying.
I mean, you are. I mean, in a sense, you kind of are. You're saying, look, hey, man, everybody has their price, and who am I ultimately to judge a guy that had that happen to them? That's a generous take, because I have other people telling me, oh no, this is who Nigel's always been.
No, maybe I don't know that. Maybe.
So
maybe
I've heard both sides. I mean, I'm just I'm throwing it out there. I'd love to see.
Look, just so we're clear, I didn't say what I said in his defense.
Right.
I just said it to maybe shed more color on his situation and what happened in the last relatively recent period, that he suddenly, suddenly turned in some way. But as you say, he's on the wrong side of every issue. How the hell did that happen?
I mean, the reality is that when he walked away from UKIP after Brexit, that was a bad move. He stymied all of the momentum, which should have carried through into the Brexit negotiations. He should have been there to handle everything, and he didn't do so. And this is again feeding into what I've heard from Brits who have said, look, Nigel's the guy that will get you close to heaven, but he'll never get you through the door. He'll always leave you at the gate. He's done it before, because that's what City of London tells him to do. I mean, that may be that may be their opinion of him. It doesn't mean it's reality.
Yeah.
It's just just relaying what I've heard, folks. Nothing more, nothing less.
Okay.
I'd like to believe in that. I'd like to believe in the big Christian redemption story for Nigel Farage. Lead them into, lead the Brits, lead the English back into power on that island, because that island is incredibly important in the Ian Burlingame conception of how we bottle up Europe. That island is the gate. That's the gateway to all. How are they going to get to Canada? How are they going to get stuff if they're able to colonize Canada? How are they going to get their collateral from Canada into Europe if we control the Gibraltar, the English Channel, and everything? They have no way to get the stuff in there, and so geographically these are the choke points. When we talk about maritime sea routes and all the rest of it. So,
Yep, and then also the financial routes as well. Financial routes. I'm English, not American English. Now, any commentary on the Polish elections, the Romanian elections, Polish elections that are coming up?
Not really.
Okay.
Nothing is. We know what's going to happen in Poland. We saw what happened in Romania. Democracy, something as pesky as democracy, is not going to stop this train within Europe as of right now. Period.
I want to say
so long as we defend our unity. That's our greatest strength.
Unity, diversity, and inclusivity. I'm learning those.
You're not pronouncing it right.
And egalitarianism.
Unity.
Okay. Unity.
Listen to Ursula von der Leyen and then repeat slowly after her until it becomes second nature.
But please don't invoke her without doing it right. Her last name is Satan.
Thank you, Ursula von der Leyen. Von der Satan. Then finally, Ramaphosa and South Africa. And I got to say something here. Because I watched how Trump ambushed Ramaphosa and the video, and then the coverage by the mainstream media. I know they're bad. I know they lie. But for fuck's sake, the Guardian saying, oh, Trump's reproducing this fact-free conspiracy theory. Fuck off. Now, let me tell you something personally, right? Personally, I was so affected by it. Wait a minute. Maybe the Guardian's telling the truth. I mean, silly me, right? But where I work, we've got new person's joined the team, a recent arrival, a white woman from South Africa. And she's telling me the shit that's going on in South Africa. And then I've got two really good friends, reliable, close, long-term friends from South Africa, and I'm saying, look, is it, because is the Guardian right here? Hell no! It's really going on. And I think it's disgusting. And it goes back to the point you made before, Tom, about all the many ways that they want to divide and rule us. They want to divide us so that they can rule us. That the idea that Trump's just a white supremacist because he's letting over these white people. I don't give a fuck what color they are. We shouldn't be killing other people. And if it's, I joined I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'm proud of it. I joined the anti-apartheid movement when I was 18 because I wanted South Africa that was free and honored all people. And that goes for honoring white people too. Fuck them. Any commentary on that, or have I said it all?
I think you said it all, dude. Like you're like a Luongo-esque rant, and I appreciate every.
I've learned so much from you,
including how to swear well. Like, the two fingers up thing. Like, you're so English.
By the way, I can always swear. I'm very, very polite.
No, and to that point, like, and it's funny, like all the things that we've been watching play out here, guys. I'm watching Clarkson's Farm season 4, and it's glorious. It's yet another beautifully entertaining discussion about just how fucked the entire managerial state is, and how this stuff plays itself out. And they're like, with each season, what started as a fish out of water story, the great ape is going to go out there and farm. The guy doesn't, can't turn a wrench. It's good. That's going to be hilarious. Okay. And then to watch him every season just make a stronger and stronger argument about just how fucked Little England is.
No.
And it's everywhere, and it's global, right? It's another one of those wonderful bits of everybody has their own version of this. I saw it when I used to farm goats. Everybody out in farmers I talked with out in Alberta, same thing. And every day I'm looking at it, and I turned to my wife last night. We got done with episode 6, 7, and 8. The last 2 episodes haven't come out yet. They come out next week. I just looked at her and I said, look at what Jeremy's doing. This is his legacy on the way out the door. He's not going to be known as a big buffoon. He's going out this way. And I got to give him credit. Like I think he's doing almost more work than we are in his own way to champion what's being lost by these fucking people. And how they're absolutely just, they hate us. They hate everything about us, and they hate community and everything else. And now this season, he's trying to build a pub and bring the farm collective back together in order to, and it's like, dude, like, it is what it is. And if the price, I saw something today, somebody complaining at him on Twitter. It's like, Jesus, I know you want to run a cheap pub, but how you like for a pie and a salad? How can you charge £24? He's like, have you seen the price of beef? If you can run it cheaper, I'll hire you. That was his response to the person. There was some rando on his Twitter feed. So he's engaging people at that level, at that micro level with massive fame that he has. And he's doing that. Like, we should all, as this happens, whatever happens to any of us, myself, Alex, you, all of us, as we, walk up the quote unquote ladder of, notoriety, for lack of a better term. It could be that I wind up in Guantanamo. That, we keep that, we keep our heads there. And it's impressive to watch him go from the ultimate prima donna now down to having been broken down to, oh my God, I have to save my community, my adopted community.
You may want to watch. I interviewed the bowler hat farmer about a month ago on my channel. He's a farmer. He's
oh yes, that was
wholesaler. And in the video, he took me through, and I knew some of them, but there's so many more. All the policies that this government and the WEF Tory government beforehand are putting in to destroy our food supply, just like they've been doing in the US. But you guys have dodged the bullet. Right, you're going to deal with the outflow of that, but the sort of stuff that they're doing in the UK and in Europe and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, deliberate policies to destroy our food supply. Because you're right, they do hate us, but we will prevail.
Of course we will.
Yeah. Alex, anything for you before we finish up?
No.
Good.
Yeah.
Unity, diversity, and inclusivity.
Unity.
Tom, anything for you?
No, sorry. To be like honorary Canadian for the afternoon. I'm TFL1720 and on Twitter. He's Naked Hedgie. He's Naked Hedgie
Right, that
on
part.
Twitter. He's Cryptowitch YT.
Yes.
This has been fun, folks. Have a great
Thank you
weekend.
so much. I'll have the links in the description below. Look forward to doing this again in a few weeks' time. Subscribe. Follow,
Excellent. Thank you, gents. Thank you to everybody watching.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I give you your own metaphysical profile. You then end up working at your best. It puts you back in touch with your own sovereign essence. I use tropical astrology, Vedic astrology, tarot, and numerology. Your best way to get in touch with me is via monicmoon.co.uk.